Well, we are arriving to the last part of this study of the institution that did not consolidate. And consider that we have been trying to make a little introduction to be able to make an approach of it. Returning to what we're talking about, in order to have another actor who is fundamental to enter the scene, we are going to talk about someone else. It was like this that in the first century, Paul gave to the task of creating and founding institutions, nothing more interesting, which for the time he was in the earth could not develop and consolidate, but gave birth to the Pauline religion, which in the years divided between believers and Christians. In other words, followers of Paul. And because it carried implicitly the seed of division, with the centuries it suffered another division, known in the ancient history as the division of the mark, giving as a result the movements in East and West. Many times later the Catholics and Protestants appear. And because of that very same seed from both sides, new divisions were born until today. Watching the eternal God, how the new faith had corrupted, how it was intended to destroy the Church of God, how a countless number of unexistent requirements and burdens were created to be able to access the grace of God, he again intervened the history and again revealed his will regarding the faith of Jesus the Messiah, our Lord. So that is why God ordered his plan to be revealed for the end of the times through the book of Revelations, commonly known as Apocalypse. And in that book, God communicated his true servants his policy regarding the salvation and the true institutions that all believers must know, moving away from the deceits of Satan and his false religions that actually control the souls and the consciences in all the world. As you can appreciate, we have a series of new elements that we consider important to be dealt with, one by one, step by step. In a first moment, we found Paul. Paul was called to preach, but he also founded and created institutions. Institutions that have generated throughout the times, for the persons that have received revelation and interpretation from God, contradictions. Contradictions that until nowadays generate profound and intense debates. Just to mention something, the famous rapture. So the studious person that dedicates to comprehend the will of God must face the Pauline controversies, the Pauline barbarities. And why does that occur? Because we cannot obviate that this creation, that this foundation of institutions in which Paul put his hands are the ones that have created and generated this profound division, confusion, and deceit that reigns in Christendom. We will study these Pauline institutions, and it will correspond to each and every one of you if you condemn them or clap them. That is your decision. It corresponds to you. Because our duty is to denounce, catalog, and to reference each of these institutions, and through the structures of the teachings and the will of God, see how appropriate or inappropriate they are. So we believe that many people will be offended, but cannot be denied that throughout the study of these institutions that did not consolidate, you will find that something is happening, that thing in some measure is the cause of the many problems that we have regarding the faith. Why? Because one of the Pauline effects is the division, and this division keeps growing on and continues to occur as time passes on. A concrete case: if you see a religious group which is born today and becomes in some measure powerful, it begins to have assets, to have saving accounts, begins to have prestige and presence, and suddenly, from overnight, you see that it divides. And it is no longer one, but two, led by two different people that maybe got along very well, but that one takes one way and the other takes other way. And many religious groups were born from divisions, right? Because that is the rule, not the exception. And that is what history records. History records the divisions between East and West, and that cannot be denied. But parallel to this Babylonian confusion, by the will and the divine grace, the merciful God allowed us to know once again His will in the book of Revelations, and based in God's new criterion, begin to see what things He unauthorized in the particular case of Paul and from others, and what is what He really wanted, and what He demanded, because that is fundamental, and in our particular case, we are from a very well-established criterion that there is a prelation of powers. We consider the maximum power God. Below it appears the Messiah. Below, the angels with their community, angels and archangels. And below, the servants of God. And because we respect that principle of prelation, that principle of authority, the same as from an originative authority and from a delegated authority. So when one talks about a delegated authority, well, there is certain power. There has to be obedience. But when the originative authority talks, the other authorities are disavowed, because the maximum authority has spoken. So for us, for example, and you will see that in the next studies, you will see that we have the following criterion. We respect what God says. And if God disavows someone, we no longer pay attention to him. That is why we consider fundamental that the book of Revelations comes to order what others have missed, because there will be no other way to understand this, to find the truth. If we attain only by what was written by Peter, Paul, or John, we will not know if something is correct or not. But because the book of Revelations appeared, we now know what things are correct and what things are not correct, how we have to do things right, and how we must abandon things. That is why we consider fundamental and necessary to share these new beliefs that emanate from God Himself. God that we consider sempiternal and 3 times holy. Those instructions are the base of the belief of all those that are not part of Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. So if you have a question or doubt, or want to share us something, or make some questioning, want to talk to us and know more about us, you can write to the last church followed by the number 7 @gmail.com. And as we have said, we will gladly read your emails. If they need to be answered, we will answer them. Or if a study needs to be done, we will make that study to share it through the radio. We consider that this topic, that this first stage, has only provided us with a historical background, and to start clarifying much or less the environment of things that the next studies will get in charge of. We hope, above all else, that you don't get filled with data, but that you know the truth, the aspects of the true faith, and do not want to continue following the daughters or the mother of the religious harlots. Because, as we have said, the most important is to share you the revelation, which the majority of religious groups until today do not dare to tell you. So you decide. So we invite you to write us to the last church 7 @gmail.com, and we will gladly answer you if that is the case. And we also invite you to visit our webpage, church-of-god.tk.